An Essay on Criticism is a poetic essay by Alexander Pope, published in 1709. It is a work that explores the nature and principles of literary criticism while also providing guidance to poets and critics. The essay is written in heroic couplets, which are rhyming pairs of lines in iambic pentameter. Here's a summary of the main points and themes covered in the essay. Introduction, lines 1 to 26. The essay begins with a discussion of the role of critics and their importance in the literary world. Pope suggests that critics are necessary to ensure that literature maintains its standards and to guide aspiring writers. Nature and rules of criticism, lines 27 to 64. Pope argues that critics should possess a deep understanding of the subject they criticize. He emphasizes that critics should have good judgment, taste, and the ability to distinguish between true and false excellence. He also points out that critics should not be overly harsh or biased, as that can hinder their objectivity. The nature of true genius, lines 65 to 132. Pope discusses the difference between good and bad writing. He suggests that true genius is marked by a combination of natural talent and hard work. He criticizes writers who are too concerned with following rules and conventions without allowing their creativity to shine. The rules of good writing, lines 133 to 370. Pope elaborates on various guidelines that writers should follow to create successful poetry. These guidelines include maintaining harmony between different elements of a poem, such as sound and sense, using appropriate metaphors, avoiding excessive ornamentation, and maintaining a sense of unity and consistency in the work. The importance of imitation, lines 371 to 560. Pope asserts that imitation is a valuable tool for writers to learn from the masters of literature. He encourages writers to study and learn from the classics and to incorporate their knowledge into their own work. Nature of critics, lines 561 to 744. Pope addresses critics again, cautioning against overly ambitious and arrogant critics who judge the works of others without understanding the challenges of writing. He emphasizes that critics should be fair, humble, and constructive in their evaluations. Avoiding common mistakes, lines 745 to 858. Pope provides a list of common errors that writers often make, such as using too many words, straying from the main theme, and relying excessively on wit. He advises writers to maintain simplicity, clarity, and coherence in their writing. Conclusion, lines 859 to 744. Pope concludes by emphasizing that a good critic and a good writer are both rare and precious. He reminds his readers that while the essay provides guidelines, the ultimate test of good writing lies in the reader's judgment. An Essay on Criticism is a significant work in the history of literary criticism, as it addresses the principles of good writing, the role of critics, and the challenges faced by both writers and critics. It emphasizes the importance of balance, judgment, and the pursuit of excellence in the world of literature. Nature and rules of criticism. Pope suggests that critics should have a good understanding of the subject they are critiquing. They should be well versed in literature and possess the ability to discern quality. For example, first, if you aim at praise, be cautious still. Nor ever blaze, but with a borrowed flame. Ellipsis. Mark how the world's poor people pass along, whispering, and pointing, and the news runs fast. See yonder ally, who can know the last? Lines 43 to 44, 49 to 50. In these lines, Pope advises critics to avoid hasty judgment and to base their opinions on thorough knowledge rather than relying solely on the opinions of others. The nature of true genius. Pope argues that true genius arises from a combination of natural talent and diligent effort. He criticizes those who lack genuine inspiration and simply imitate others without adding their own creativity. For example, true ease in writing comes from art, not chance. As those move easiest who have learned to dance. Lines 362 to 363. Here, Pope suggests that becoming skilled at writing requires both natural ability, art, and deliberate practice. Learn to dance. The rules of good writing. Pope outlines several rules for good writing, such as maintaining harmony between sound and sense, using appropriate metaphors, and avoiding excessive ornamentation. For example, but where's the man who counsel can bestow? Still pleased to teach, and yet not proud to know. Lines 539 to 540. In these lines, Pope highlights the importance of humility and the ability to teach without arrogance, which is an important aspect of good writing. The importance of imitation. Pope believes that imitation of classical works is essential for writers to learn and improve their craft. For example, first, I must count it affront to know Some say your verse is sure in theft to show. Yet artful lines in other works we see. What is it, then, that they so thievish be? Lines 189 to 192. Here, Pope defends the practice of imitation by suggesting that even the greatest writers have drawn inspiration from others. Nature of critics. Pope cautions against critics who are overly ambitious, lacking in humility, or ignorant of the challenges of writing. He advocates for fair and constructive criticism. For example, some valuing those of their own side or mind, still make themselves the measure of mankind. Fondly we think we honor merit then, when we but praise ourselves in other men. Lines 203 to 206. These lines warn against biased judgment and self-serving criticism. Avoiding common mistakes. Pope offers advice to writers to avoid common errors, such as verbosity and lack of focus. For example, a little learning is a dangerous thing. Drink deep, or taste not the Pierian spring. Lines 215 to 216. Here, Pope advises writers to seek a deep and thorough understanding of their subjects rather than relying on superficial knowledge. These examples illustrate the key themes and principles discussed in An Essay on Criticism. Pope's essay provides valuable insights into the art of writing and criticism, emphasizing the importance of balance, skill, and careful consideration. Nature and rules of criticism. Pope emphasizes the importance of balanced judgment in critics. He warns against critics who lack objectivity and proper understanding of the works they critique. For example, all seems infected infected spy. As all looks yellow to the jaundiced eye. Lines 113 to 114. These lines convey that a biased critic tends to find faults even where they might not exist. The nature of true genius. Pope discusses the dangers of writers who aim to be overly witty or use excessive ornamentation. He argues that genuine creativity should be evident but not overshadow the purpose of the work. For example, in words, as fashions, the same rule will hold. Alike fantastic if too new or old. Be not the first by whom the new are tried, nor yet the last to lay the old aside. Lines 79 to 82. These lines caution against being too experimental or too traditional in one's writing. The rules of good writing. Pope suggests that a harmonious blend of form and content is crucial in poetry. He advocates for a smooth integration of sound and meaning. For example, 'tis not enough no harshness gives offense. The sound must seem an echo to the sense. Lines 364 to 365. These lines stress the significance of the auditory experience of poetry being in harmony with its meaning. The importance of imitation. Pope argues that learning from the great writers of the past is essential for developing one's own style and voice. For example, some, to whom heaven in wit has been profuse, want as much more to turn it to its use. For wit and judgment often are at strife, though meant each other's aid, like man and wife. Lines 159 to 162. These lines highlight the idea that possessing raw talent is not enough, one must also know how to use it effectively. Nature of critics. Pope criticizes critics who are quick to condemn others without understanding the challenges of writing. He suggests that such critics often fail to recognize their own limitations. For example, wit, like a diamond, shines on the whole, and, as its presence, often grace bestows, though sometimes it may press its rougher way against the glass it should adorn and say. Lines 351 to 354. These lines imply that critics should be careful not to harm the very things they should be promoting. Avoiding common mistakes. Pope emphasizes the need for clarity and coherence in writing. He warns against excessive verbosity that obscures the main message. For example, words are like leaves, and where they most abound, much fruit of sense beneath is rarely found. Lines 309 to 310. These lines emphasize that too many words can distract from the true substance of a work. In An Essay on Criticism, Pope's lines are rich with wisdom and advice for both writers and critics. The examples provided showcase his insights into the nuances of literature, the challenges faced by writers, and the criteria by which literary works should be evaluated. Nature and rules of criticism. Pope emphasizes the need for critics to be well-versed in literature and to possess a solid foundation of knowledge. He warns against critics who lack understanding and merely criticize for the sake of it. For example, such shameless bards we have, and yet 'tis true. There are as mad, abandoned critics too. Lines 311 to 312. Here, Pope is critical of both writers who lack shame in their work and critics who are reckless in their judgments. The nature of true genius. Pope advocates for a harmonious balance between creativity and restraint. He cautions against being too extravagant or excessive in writing. For example, be niggards of advice on no pretense. For the worst avarice is that of sense. Lines 333 to 334. Pope advises writers not to overload their work with unnecessary advice or ideas, as this can detract from the core message. The rules of good writing. Pope discusses the importance of using metaphors appropriately and effectively. He warns against using metaphors that do not align with the subject matter. For example, learn hence for ancient rules a just esteem. To copy nature is to copy them. Lines 360 to 361. Here, Pope suggests that imitating nature is a reliable way to create effective metaphors. The importance of imitation. Pope stresses that learning from the past masters is essential for growth and improvement in writing. He compares this process to a chain of knowledge passed down through generations. For example, "'Tis with our judgments as our watches, none go just alike, yet each believes his own." Lines 9 to 10. These lines highlight the individuality of opinions while emphasizing the importance of personal understanding. Nature of critics. Pope discusses the danger of critics who are overly confident in their judgments, believing their own opinions to be the ultimate truth. For example, all fools have still an itching to deride, and fain would be upon the laughing side. Lines 95 to 96. Pope suggests that some critics are driven by a desire to mock and ridicule rather than to provide thoughtful analysis. Avoiding common mistakes. Pope warns against writers who try too hard to impress with their vocabulary and style, often leading to convoluted and unclear writing. For example, words are like glass that through clear reveal the things within which though dull or real. Lines 301 to 302. These lines emphasize that words should be transparent and reveal the true essence of ideas. In An Essay on Criticism, Pope provides a comprehensive exploration of various aspects of literature, writing, and criticism. The examples given highlight his keen observations on the complexities of artistic creation, the potential pitfalls to be avoided, and the principles that guide both writers and critics. An Essay on Criticism, by Alexander Pope addresses several themes that revolve around the nature of literary criticism, the art of writing, and the principles that guide both poets and critics. Here are some of the key themes from the essay. Criticism and judgment. Pope examines the role of critics and the importance of their discernment and judgment. He discusses the need for critics to possess a deep understanding of literature and to provide constructive analysis rather than simply finding fault. The essay emphasizes the significance of balanced and fair criticism. The nature of genius. Pope explores the concept of true literary genius, emphasizing the combination of innate talent and diligent effort. He criticizes writers who rely solely on their natural abilities without honing their skills through practice and learning from the masters. The theme underscores the importance of both inspiration and craftsmanship. Guidelines for good writing. The essay lays out various rules and guidelines for successful writing. These guidelines encompass elements such as harmony between sound and meaning, appropriate use of metaphors, simplicity in expression, and maintaining coherence and unity within a work. The theme centers on the principles that contribute to effective and impactful writing. The value of imitation. Pope advocates for the practice of studying and imitating the works of classical authors. He argues that imitation is an important tool for writers to learn from the accomplishments of their predecessors and to incorporate their wisdom into their own creations. The theme highlights the value of building upon established literary traditions. The nature of critics and criticism. Pope scrutinizes the role of critics and the challenges they face. He warns against critics who lack humility, proper knowledge, or a balanced perspective. The essay emphasizes the need for critics to approach their task with humility and an understanding of the complexities involved in both writing and evaluating literature. Avoiding common pitfalls. Pope discusses common mistakes that writers make, such as excessive ornamentation, verbosity, and losing focus on the main theme. He provides guidance on how to avoid these pitfalls and stresses the importance of clarity, conciseness, and staying true to the central message of a work. Humility and self-awareness. Throughout the essay, Pope emphasizes the importance of humility and self-awareness for both writers and critics. He cautions against arrogance, overconfidence, and bias, suggesting that a willingness to acknowledge limitations and learn from others is essential for growth and improvement. Balancing tradition and innovation. Pope acknowledges the value of tradition and established literary norms while also encouraging